kind of a wrap up, if you will, except that I'm not really wrapping up the month in just a couple weeks. Seems weird, so I gotta come up with something to describe what I'm doing. But basically, I just want to chat about the books I've read in the last couple weeks, because my monthly average thus far has been around 16 to 20, and that's a big old long video if I do it at the end of the week. Thinking I might do these weekly. I don't know, that seems like an awful lot, but it just depends on how long this ends up being and everything. So without further ado, what have I read in June? Well, the first one I read, I don't have the physical book for because I listened on audio, so I'll, put it up here somewhere. But I read the Chilbury Ladies Choir. It's by the gal who did Spies of Shilling Lane, which I've heard amazing things about. It has kind of a Guernsey feel to it, but it's not, in my opinion, it's not as good as Guernsey. The story itself, there were times I thought stuff might kind of go in directions that I wasn't really comfortable with, and it's not that everybody in the book makes great choices, but stories aren't usually all that good if everybody in the book makes great choices, right? But there's like a very good redemptive arc. This is not Christian fiction, but there's a really good redemptive arc. There is, people have to grow, people have to learn from mistakes, make mistakes, and everything kind of in between. So that part was really, really good. Why I gave it 4 stars. I thought it would barely make 3 for a while there. But then I saw where things were going, and then they actually went where they needed to go, not necessarily predictably. It wasn't all totally predictable. Some of it was, some of it wasn't. But it's the way the author did it is really, really good. And I can't even remember her name. So I'm going to look at this. Jennifer Ryan. So Jennifer Ryan, it's a completely epistolary novel, very much like Guernsey, right? And so we're talking journal entries, letters, kind of notes. So it's a different, like diary journal entries, and then notes to, like not really medical notes, but so there are some people in this book that I did not like. And you're not really supposed to. And then you kind of, by the end, they became more sympathetic, some of them, not all of them. And that was kind of neat. But what I really wish would have happened and didn't, and the only reason that it didn't actually move up to 5 stars for me, it's epistolary. And I listened on audio, which means that I got different, and because there's a cast of, I think it's 4 voices. 4 voice actors. So it's not just the same person reading all the letters. It's not as big as Guernsey's, but it's a pretty substantial cast. I think there's 4, maybe there's 5. There's something like that. But what the problem was is that even with the audio and the different voices and stuff, it had a very much a one note. The author voice is so strong that the characters don't become their own. There's certain ways that she likes to phrase things, and certain she really likes to get very almost lyrical at times, and not every person is going to write like that. So you've got everyone from a 13, 14-year-old girl all the way up to, quite almost elderly people, and men and women, and they all kind of write the same. And that was my biggest objection, because while there were certain things that she did really good at making Kitty, she's the youngest, she's a young girl who's kind of she's like a singer in the choir, and she's quite something. She's probably the most prominent on the one hand, where her voice is the most unique. Or it would be one of the midwives in town. She came off as much more unique, but I can't tell because I didn't read it, I just listened. I can't tell if that was the voice actress, because the voice actress really did a phenomenal job of giving that gal a very, very, very distinct sound to her voice. So it could have been that. But for the most part, the writing was a one note. All these letters sounded pretty much alike. And I was disappointed in that. It's a mild criticism because the story itself was so good. I know some people don't like it, and that's okay. I did, but because of that, because I kept noticing it, I didn't just get lost in the story and not notice anymore, which I have done with other books that have similar arguments. But I didn't in this one. This one jumped out. So I gave the Chilbury Ladies Choir 4 stars. I still really liked it, and for the most part, it was pretty clean. I believe there were a few words that I didn't appreciate, not very many. And every time I thought a scene was going to get too detailed, it didn't. You know very well that there are shenanigans going on. They aren't applauded, if you will, and yet they're kind of made to be understood. So, there's that. So that was the first book I read in June. I started it at the end of May, and then I read it in June. I've got something in my eye. Okay, and then the next one, I blame Mitzi from Mitzi Reads and Writes for this, because I saw this super adorable book on her shelf. Actually, I think she showed us. Isn't this the super cutest book ever? And I fell so much in love with the idea of the story and with this particular edition that I bought the slip-covered Folio Society edition on eBay because I had to have it because it's super cute. This is it's Diary of a Nobody by, I cannot remember the guy's name. John Lawrence. No, that's Drawings. Drawings by John Lawrence. George and Whedon Grossmith. Okay. I should have my glasses on, but I don't. Anyway. So Diary of a Nobody is kind of just a diary of this one guy. It's really funny. At one point he's complaining that people are reading his diary and stealing his diaries, and it's pretty hoot. So he's a husband with a grown son and a wife, and I don't even remember his name. I'm being really bad about names this year. It's kind of weird. But in this one, it's kind of Victorian era. The son, in my opinion, the son's a jerk. I don't like the son, and while what the author did with the son was realistic, I still didn't like it because I feel like the son got away with being a jerk at the end, which really bugged me because the son was a jerk. And that's okay because I wasn't supposed to like him and applaud the jerkiness. That's not what the story was about. This guy, he's kind of a middle class, maybe lower to middle class guy in Victorian England, and he's got a good position at this firm. He's a little self-important. It always feels to me like he's trying to give himself airs and graces, kind of like you would expect from like some Regency girl who's not quite top drawer, So it's kind of weird. His wife, I love his wife, and I like him, but he is a little self-important. Yeah. I gave the book 4 stars because it was so much fun to read, not because it was just a great story. The story itself, it's just kind of a slice of life. It does tell a story through it, but it's mostly in vignettes because that's what a diary does, right? But yeah, it wasn't good enough for 5 stars for me, but I really did enjoy it, and I will probably actually read it again. I have a feeling this is one of those books that will get better with each time. So someday somebody may go over to Goodreads and see that I've swapped that out for 5 stars, but for right now, that one I gave it 4. And then this is May's, The Middle Window, Elizabeth Goudge. This was May's Goudge book. I'm reading 1 book of Goudge a month this year, and The Middle Window was for May, but I didn't start it until I'd already been home for a week, so I didn't start it until like the last week of May or so, and so it took a while to finish. So I didn't finish it until June, but This one, you've got a gal. This book was so good and yet so weird. You have a gal who sees a painting in London, is just drawn in by this painting and decides she is going there. And it's a place in Scotland, and it tells the story of how she packs her parents and her fiance up and drags them off to this little glen in out of the way Scotland to stay in this, you know, old kind of ramshackle, you know, small manor-ish house. And it's got kind of a grumpy butler sort of dude, and Angus. I loved Angus. He was probably my favorite character. I really loved Angus. But then, you know, while she's there, she keeps getting drawn to the laird, Ian, of this, you know, clan. I believe they're McDonald's. And then things get a little weird. Now, in this place, she's like, loves everything. She feels like she's come home when she gets here, and she's kind of a spoiled little rich girl, and this is not a spoiled little rich girl's place to go. So that was kind of cool. But she loves it until every time she gets to this place where you could tell a window used to be, but it's all bricked up, and just this grief, this deep, overwhelming sadness comes over her. Little mystical. Every once in a while, Elizabeth Goudge does that. She gets a little mystical, and I don't really like that as a general rule, but there's something about the way she does it that I don't mind as much. So there was that. And then it kind of splits, and it takes you back to the days of Bonnie Prince Charlie in the 1700s and the battles and all that stuff. And then it brings it all together in a, again, somewhat mystical way. And that I wasn't sure I was going to like. There was a while there that I didn't even know if I would finish it because of where I saw it going, and it was bothering me. And then it just didn't. It didn't do that. And so my DNF became a 4-star read. There's so much beauty and richness in this, and it's killing me that I wasn't tabbing it as I was going. Because I would just get enthralled with the story and forget, because it is a beautiful story of Scotland, and I had just gotten home from Scotland when I read it, and kind of wish I had read it before I went, but I didn't know. I had no idea this was about Scotland until I started it. So 4 stars, good book. I will read it again, and I hope I love it even more the next time. I kind of suspect I will. And so this one's another one that the rating could go up. So the next one I read it's a audio, so I'll put the audio thing up here. It is The Case of the Canterfell Codicil by P.J. Fitzsimmons. And I gave it 4 stars. I thought I gave it 3. Interesting. Well, I knew I would like the series. There were things about the first book. I think the author was just kind of trying to get a feel for his character and kind of get to know his character himself. The main character is Anthony Beaujolais. He is a gentleman in the 20s in England. So Anthony Beaujolais is an English gentleman in the 20s. He's probably got more money than he knows what to do with. You can tell there's some family dynamic stuff that may come into play. I'm not sure. And this one is about, there is a will that has a codicil, and everybody's trying to find it when someone dies. And then there's the story. But I had problems with some of the character, especially Anthony. It's like he went too far with he's kind of one of those, he's a little bit like Bertie Wooster in the way and if you like Roadhouse, you will like these. But he's a little like Bertie Wooster in the way that they have the ridiculous names for each other, and he's kind of flippant about things and a little rude about other things. But he's a neat guy, and I can see that he's going to be okay. Well, you know, and then I read on, and I found out that I was right. So I gave it 4 stars. I think because I rounded up, I think I probably decided it was a 3.5. I didn't love it, but I did like it, and I did want to keep reading. So there was that. So The Case of the Canterfell Codicil, audio. And the narrator on that one, by the way, really, really good. Then my Read Your Bookshelf Challenge book was K.M. Weiland Storming. I started this book, and I thought I had only read a few chapters years ago, but I actually read, a lot of it was really familiar, at least to like the halfway point. So I read a lot more than I thought I did, only because things were familiar, not because I remembered. This book, it starts off, so I don't think I'm really giving away any spoilers. They might even be in the back. Yeah, I think it's on the back here. This guy is like a barnstormer. He's, a trick pilot. They've got, another guy that does it with him. They, do these aerial shows. That's how they make their living. And he's come home to where he's been running away from for the last 10 years. And because there's this big exhibition and there's prize money and he wants to win that prize money. And so coming home, he's left people, they're all mad at him. And so there's all kinds of backstory there. But then on top of it, as he's practicing one night, he literally, and I'm not misusing that word, he literally sees a woman fall out of the sky wearing a ball gown. Nearly hits her. So I'm just saying there's that. And then it's this whole story of a dirigible and the people there and the people, down on the ground, and she calls it a diesel punk, and how, he's trying to help this girl who's got more feistiness in her little pinky than most characters do throughout a whole book. I mean, this character, her name is Jael, my all-time favorite Bible name. This is not Christian fiction, but it is fiction written by a Christian author from a distinctly Christian worldview. And oh, by the way, there were scenes of faith in it that weren't overt, but they were clear to a Christian. So I'll just put that out there. But this book, oh my gravy. It was so fun, and it was a great story. It really was. There were things that I suspected, and I was right. That's always fun. I would have actually been disappointed if I was wrong. Usually I'm not, because it's not a mystery. So, but usually I'm not disappointed when I'm wrong. If you trip me up, but this time what I decided was a thing, I would have been disappointed if it wasn't the thing. So there's that. But it's lots of fun. I think rollicking would be a good word. It's a romp, definitely. But also the writing. She was so consistent with phraseology and turns of phrases that fit this character but not this character, but then this character had their own, and it was like the antithesis of the Chilbury Ladies Choir in that respect, but also just the way she writes, because her author voice came through. So each character is very distinct in how they handle things, but then the author voice came through strong too, where it belonged. That was really good. Seriously, excellent. It might even be on the way to my house now, but I'm definitely going to read Dreamlander, which I've always wanted to read. Something about things happen in their dreams and becomes a portal to somewhere, and she has to fight battles and come back, or something like that. I don't remember, but I definitely want to read Dreamlander. So this was 5 stars, probably before the end of the first chapter. I was like, yeah, this is a 5-star read unless she does something really stupid. And she didn't. She just got better and better throughout the whole thing. So, Storming, K.M. Weiland, excellent book. And then I read, remember, well, you may not have seen it, but in my BookTube newbie video, I shared the Sensible Shoes books, and, how my friend had said to read this series, and I had waited so long, and then I finally read it at just the right time. Well, years ago, I'm going to say like 2017, 18, somewhere in there, my daughter gave me this book, Anne Bogle, I'd Rather Be Reading, and come on, a book about why we love to read. I know why I love to read. I know what's so great about reading. Why do I need to read a book about it? Not that I wasn't interested, but I never made it a priority. Well, then I was like, I need to either read that book or get rid of it. And I couldn't bring myself to get rid of it because I did want to know what was in it. So I said, it's time. Just read the damn thing. Especially when I flipped through and saw how short it was. Well, guys, I don't know if you can see this, but this thing is tabbed within an inch of its life. This will be researched definitely for my book string series because reasons. This book, anyone who loves books or wants to know why somebody loves books, this needs to be it. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna read a couple. Just gonna do it. I just gonna do it. Just because it'll make so much more sense if I just read a couple of things as to why. C.S. Lewis, yes. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Friendship is born at the moment when one man says to another, 'What? You too? I thought I was the only one.'" We are readers. Books are an essential part of our lives and of our stories. For us, reading isn't just a hobby or a pastime, it's a lifestyle. Yeah, definitely. And then I found this book. I've got to read it. I don't know anything about it. But she says, Sarah Addison Allen's charming debut novel, Garden Spells, features a character who feels compelled to give odd little gifts to her friends and neighbors. Strawberry Pop-Tarts, 2 quarters, a silk shirt that's 3 times too big. There's a bit of magic about each gift because the giver never knows what it's for when she gives it. Yet the gift always turns out to be vital to the recipient, who soon finds she needs strawberry Pop-Tarts. So I saw that and I was like, yeah, that. So I want to read that one. So right there, that was worth it just to find a new book to read. I'm not going to read them all. I'm just going to make myself turn. That's about a book, so we won't do that. Readers want to discover what they want to read, and they want to discover it for themselves. It's talking about being book bossy. I am often book bossy. I'm like, go read that book. Read it. Just read it now. Right now. Hurry up, move. So yeah. And then she's talking about keeping a book journal. She's like, record your books as a gift to your future self. A travelogue you'll be able to pull off the shelf years from now to remember the journey. So there's lots and lots of stuff in here that were so good. So that was a 5-star read. Probably by the end of the first page, I knew, without a doubt. So there's that. Then I read Quick and the Dead, Brand of Justice, Book 3. This series is awesome. It's Lisa Phillips. She is amazing. I love Lisa Phillips. I gotta get these things off because they're killing me. But Lisa Phillips, this is I would call it more of a thriller. Yeah, it's more of a thriller than just a suspense. But it's non-stop, action-packed. If anything can go wrong, it's going to go wrong, and yet you believe it because of the situations that these people are in. You don't feel like it's over the top. It just feels like if one more thing happens, there's no way they're going to get out of it. And sometimes, you know, the main character, Kenna, doesn't get him out of it. Someone else has to get him out of it because she's not invincible. She's not Veronica Mars, okay? She's okay, that's not really fair. Veronica Mars doesn't get out of everything, but she does get out a lot more than you would expect. She's a little overpowerful, but she's fun. But this book, she goes to a little town. Was it in New Mexico? I don't even remember where she was because I was paying attention. She goes to a little town, I believe it's called Hatchet, and she's looking for missing people and who killed whom, and they're coming after her. Hatchet County Courthouse. Well, that's great, but what state? I don't know. I think it's New Mexico. I'm pretty sure because she doesn't have her PI license and she's working, and that's going to get her in trouble. So, or it should. We shall see. But no, this book was really good. I didn't want, and usually, again, I read about 5 chapters in a book a night. If chapters are really short, I will read 10. This one, somewhere around, I'm going to say here. Yeah, I just gave up trying to wait till the next day and finished it. So there's that. And then the next one I read was, The Case of the Ghost of Christmas Morning. And I gave that one, it's another by Fitzsimmons. P.J. Fitzsimmons, another anti-Beaujolais mystery. This one was significantly better. So again, this was a solid 4 stars, and the other ones were like 3.5, but I gave it 4. This one was a whole lot of fun. In some ways kind of obvious, and in some ways not. That was good. There were things that you had to really like pay attention to, and I was listening, so I know I missed a few things, which made it more fun for me. I think that's why I like to listen to mysteries on audio, because I don't catch all the clues that way. You know, if something distracts me, I might miss a clue. I get most of them because I'm listening pretty closely, but I could miss something if the dog barks or whatever and not know I missed it, so I don't go back, right? And so I think that's one of the reasons why I really like them. We shall see. I could be wrong. I don't know. But yeah, that one was a lot of fun. It takes place, he goes to visit his aunt at Christmas, and his aunt goes to visit a friend and comes home and says he's dead, but there are only 2 sets of footprints, the guy who died and his aunt's going to the house in the snow. But the aunt didn't do it. She swears. So she couldn't have, right? So far, in all of the books that I've listened to with Fitzsimmons, there is Auntie Beaujolais, and then there's the detective inspector, whose name, Wentworth, maybe? His name might be Wentworth. I'm not sure. But he has been in them all the time. So I think they're going to become like buddies. And that's kind of cool. So I liked it. I'm still listening. I've got the 4th one queued up, ready to start tonight. So clearly I'm a fan. I'm going to keep listening to those while I wait for some of the ones that I'm still a little more interested in. That might be why so far I haven't given any 5 stars, because I don't know, but I tend to have this attitude. I'm just gonna interject this right here. Every book that I go into reading is 5 stars when I start, and you got to give me a reason to take off points. So I will rate a classic that is genius, Count of Monte Cristo. That's a 5-star read for me. I love that book. But I will rate a cozy mystery that is just a lot of fun and I had a blast reading it that day. I'm going to rate them the same. On equal literary merit? No, they're not the same. But you know what? The mystery never claimed to be. They never tried to be. And it's like taking a 5th grader and comparing his term paper with a professor's, dissertation and saying, oh, yours isn't as good, I got to dock you. No, compare them to the other 5th graders, did they all meet expectations? Did they all, bring something extra to the table? Did they all, and so for that reason, I give a lot of 5 stars because I'm predisposed to love a book to begin with. And as long as you don't give me a reason not to, I'm not docking it. So there's that. And finally, probably my top book of the month, even more than Storming, which is really hard to say, but it was so good on so many levels. It is The Body They May Kill by Audrey Stallsmith. She did the Time Will Tell mysteries. These are from like 1999. They're way back. The author this one was 95. The author only wrote 4 books that I know of. And my mom told me that this one was better than the Time Will Tell series, and I didn't believe her. Guys, just listen to Mom. Mother knows best. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. This one had a good mystery, good motive, lots of great red herrings, lots of suspects that totally could have done it. So the mystery itself, that part was really good. But it had 2 other things going for it that not all books nail as well as this one did. First, the murder victim in this book. I don't think I've ever fallen in love with a character so deeply, so thoroughly, and so instantly than I did in this book. That character it was like a page and a half maybe that we got. Maybe page and a half at the most. But I loved that. I just I want to be your friend. I want you in my life. It was very similar to Mrs. Kipp of The Extraordinary Deaths of Mrs. Kipp, where you just love that person, but seriously, in half the time or less. And then of course the author did what every good author does, especially in a mystery, and killed the character you love. And now you are out for justice for that character. And so in that respect, she did it. But I don't know if you can see how many tabs I have here. It's unbelievable. So I'm just going to throw a couple of things just to give a feel for the depth of faith in here. This is about the murder victim's cousin. I gotta be careful so I don't give away anything. So I'm gonna be I'll be careful. But in books by the likes of C.S. Lewis and G.K. Chesterton, she discovered a God completely different than the one she'd heard so much about. A God to whom her cousin talked about as naturally as talking to her. This completely unnerved her the first few times she heard it. Her cousin explained apologetically that cousin had gotten used to praying aloud from many years of living alone and hoped it wouldn't bother her. It was not like any praying she'd ever encountered, more like a conversation with an old but occasionally obdurate friend. I love that she called God obdurate. I mean, come on. And then she goes on to describe, remember the cousin just like flipping through the Bible when something's not going the way he thinks it should be going. She's flipping through the Bible and saying, see, look, there. So there's that. But yeah, just, there's so many. So she's been rude. She has to apologize. She's like, well, you don't think the apologizing idea was mine, do you? At the time, I felt more like slashing the man's tires or his throat. But God is kind of relentless on this truth thing, so I argued with him about it for a while. Then I started up the lane as slow as I could go, fighting all the while. How often do we do that with God, right? Oh man, there's some that are pretty actually deep, and I'm not actually getting most of the deep ones. Perhaps Max's opinion of her was true after all. She wanted all the sentimental trappings, the consolation of religion, without allowing it to disturb her comfort. And there rang through her mind as loudly as it had been spoken beside her the final words on that white tombs full of dead bones. So yeah, this book was like a meaty sermon without ever being preached to, and wrapped up in a great mystery that I had a blast reading. And I'm brokenhearted that I've read everything this author's ever written, but I will be reading it again because with that many, even knowing how it ends, I'm gonna love it. So that's what I've read so far in June. I've got a few that are almost done. I will do at least one more of these by the end of June. And yeah, what are you reading? Reading anything good? Like something I need to put on my list like right away before the end of the month gets here because we only got a few days left? Let me know. And see you later.